Welcome to episode 532 of the Barcelona podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Dan Hilton, and a 2-1 victory over Porto in the Champions League has me, unlike Rayo Vallecano, where a lot of the matches before that international break, it's got me feeling like there was a lot to talk about. That finally, after a few weeks, it was a win that some people thought it was a good win, some people still had their issues, and I think, yes, the truth obviously is somewhere in between, and I've got good things and bad things to talk about in these 5 headlines, but it was nice to see differing opinions about FC Barcelona for once when watching a match. It finally means that there are things to talk about, both good and bad, instead of always having to deal with the bad. So I'm excited to jump into these 5 headlines. Before that, though, of course, as always, please subscribe or give a good rating on the podcast apps. That's the best way to help the channel, as well, of course, joining Patreon. And I want to thank also the new patrons who've joined in recent weeks. Thank you, especially during the holiday season, for keeping this whole thing going. But without further ado, let's jump in. The 5 headlines from Barcelona's 2-1 win over Porto. Headline 1 is strongest 11, and that is a question here because with Gavi's operation having hopefully gone successfully this morning, the rest of this season, and for what has been Xavi's entire managerial time in charge, it's really felt like he's never had his strongest 11 week in and week out, month in and month out, and now with Gavi on the shelf for the remainder of this season and into next season, I'll still always be able to say that no, Xavi does not have his best 11 at his disposal. But as far as the players that he had available for today's match, aside from Ter Stegen, because you could even argue without Ter Stegen, Iñaki Peña in, that is not Barcelona's strongest 11. However, from the outfield players that he had available, I think there is a fair argument to say that yes, this was Barcelona's 11. And it fit the occasion too. Of course, it was sad to see Terry Venables passing away, and he is certainly a figure that I want to focus on in a future episode and kind of deep dive on his time in the 80s, which 1980s for Barcelona kind of get lost in the history of the club because not a lot of winning was being done, though they did have some European success to talk about, and I was thinking about Venables and 1986 and all that in preparation to this match, where the moment and the 11 should have fit all that. But it was a decision that Xavi had to make, and this 11 really was going to go a long way in terms of even deciding if he might be a manager of Barcelona by the end of this season. I had talked about for weeks now that his seat, well, it was hot enough for Laporta to come out and vocally support his continuity, that being Xavi's, and that only happens when a Barca manager's seat is heating up. And things are getting more difficult, and he is under a lot of pressure. And Xavi's been complaining about that Catalan press and pressure that he's been under all season and since he even took over. He knew that was coming when he took over the job, but it does feel in the last few weeks that with the results not going his way, this could have been cataclysmic if Barcelona somehow found a way after that Shakhtar Donetsk loss to not qualify for the next stage of the Champions League. Or even losing the group would have been something pretty dire. Headline 2, looking down the left, because regardless of what 11 that you choose for a match, you have to have the right ideas. And Xavi laid his cards on the table rather early in the way he wanted to set up his tactics. Early on, you saw that Barcelona were looking for numerical overloads on the left, but also conceding a little bit of natural width, deciding to want to try to deal with Porto's counterattack by defending a bit more narrow. That meant that either Cancelo or Joao Felix were providing the width, but not both. It was either Joao Felix receiving the ball to his feet on the outside, or it was Cancelo coming inside. Though in build-up, it became 3 at the back, and Cancelo, this again, when Barcelona is keeping possession in their half of the field and trying to build up, break those lines, that meant Cancelo was firmly on the touchline, allowing Joao Felix to tuck inside and try to play off of Lewandowski. De Jong also with those numerical overloads, moving to the left, and Lewandowski shifting over, creating those numerical overloads, as I said, on the left. And offensively, when you had the ball, that made a bit of sense. But then defensively, when Barca didn't have the ball, I was a little concerned from the jump. The press was off in the early going, and I think it will be for quite a bit more time without Gavi. It makes you miss Gavi, of course, presser extraordinaire, but it was also a reminder that Gundogan and De Jong and Pedri haven't played together in 2 months, and they played just 4 weeks in total together so far. So they, in fact, have been without each other in Barcelona uniforms longer than they have been together. But that poor pressing isn't just an idea about, oh, it's a shame that Gavi's not here. That allowed Porto, in reality, to come right through the middle. And it was worrying stuff in the first 10-15 minutes for me in that game. The first moments of the contest came, 8th minute for both. Barca's chance was a long shot out by Rafinha. Having one, sure, when you have the space, at least it showed that somebody on Barcelona wanted to make something happen. And Porto had one soon after. There was some conversation about the midfield as well, and I want to focus on that here. Because yes, De Jong, he was going over to the left, but he was also going over to the right and dropping into the back 3 and kind of playing that free role, being everywhere, as we saw last season with Busquets. But that means if you're going to give that kind of freedom to De Jong, then you are going to need some kind of reference point. And while Gundogan, I thought, was set up when Barcelona had the ball in Porto's half of the field, like a traditional pivot in build-up, sitting at the base of that attack. But obviously, that's not always the case. So Barcelona were doing a lot of building up through the lines from their own half of the field as well. And Barcelona were very direct. So not a lot of Pedri or Gundogan getting on the ball because they were not settling into Porto's final third much in the first half. So obviously it's not a single pivot of Gundogan. If anything, it was a single pivot with De Jong as a defensive midfielder and as Gundogan as a reference point as this left interior that is not a high left interior that we usually see with Xavi's teams, but in fact one that was much more of a box-to-box without much movement. So it is a very different profile of what we're seeing. And when you have that freedom from De Jong, but Gundogan isn't necessarily a ball winner, and neither really is Pedri, that does mean that Barcelona is susceptible to those counterattacks through the middle of the field. And we saw that plenty in that first half. Headline 3, from behind again, because that work through the middle, that's what led to Barcelona going down. Iñaki Peña did have a good save 2 minutes after that shot from Rafinha that kind of got proceedings going. But again, Porto coming to the middle. Galeno finding space between Koundé and Araujo, making his runs off of Taremi, who has both Koundé and Inigo Martinez's attention. So that left Galeno pretty available in that first half. And that's how the 1-0 happens. 30th minute, terrible defending in transition. And I'm not making excuses for Barcelona. This is one of those that's so bad, that's truly so awful on the counter, that I say this is an example of something that can't really and shouldn't be happening again. I know that they are giving up goals. And there are other moments when I've given credit to their teams, including Rayo's 1-0. But this is just terrible defending for Barcelona. Inigo Martinez undone, and he's been really good. But this is a bad moment for a guy who's been really good, including in this match. Inigo Martinez undone by Galeno, brings forward to the ball as well as he made his move past Inigo Martinez. And then Pepe bounces on the rebound, and De Jong gets caught flat-footed, scattered defending as one long ball. Here's the problem with this counter too. One long ball that Koundé couldn't chase down, which brought Inigo Martinez to the right side. That completely undid Barcelona's shape on the counter. Araujo and Cancelo were also both caught upfield. So yes, De Jong was caught flat-footed, but he was defending at the left-back position for Cancelo because both Araujo and Cancelo were caught upfield. And that is the main defensive issue with playing Cancelo at left-back and Araujo at right-back. Neither actually understands when to do what. They know what to do, but they don't know when to do it off one another. So that's the goal. They go down. And while the equalizer was scored right after that, instead of kind of going positive, negative, and making a nice little sandwich about it, let me get the other kind of negative/positive thing out of the way here. I want to talk about Rafinha's performance, as well as what that meant for Lewandowski. Rafinha so many times in this contest, this isn't a compliment. Okay. Rafinha so many times in this contest held the ball too long or was looking to try to get fouled. And what that did was it delayed runs and got Barcelona all out of its rest defense shape because everybody is anticipating what he's going to do next instead of making runs when he receives the ball to keep the ball moving. And Rafinha works so hard, and he's looking to do and break the game open and make things happen. It's the same reason why it took me a long time to really get frustrated from a really rough run of form from Joao Felix, because they're trying so hard to make something happen, but it's not working within the systems and parameters that Xavi has put on it. And I think that's one of the reasons why in the last two games, Xavi's going away from that positional play a bit more. The return of Frankie de Jong also does have a role in that to play, but for Rafinha, he has to release the ball earlier. Offensively, it's all breaking down. And when he gets his goals, yes, he worked hard for him. But I also understand you can't just pull him out of this starting 11 because the reason why he is still probably part of Xavi's best 11, even over Lamine Yamal, is that defensively, Rafinha is so useful. For the very same reasons why he's frustrating on the attack, it's useful to have him putting his body between the man and the ball and getting those fouls and getting Porto out of their own rhythm. That helped them to keep possession in the 68th minute and other times. But in the opponent's half of the field, it shuts everything down. So the same good things that he's doing in Barcelona's half are working against him and the team on the other half of the field. And that is leading to some of those counters. When he gives it away by making that cut into the middle of the field, and then Gundogan, Pedri, and De Jong are kind of trying to find the space off of him, but he makes one extra move or two extra moves, that means that they're then out of position for everything coming the other way. So I don't know how to fix that problem, or if all of that is truly on Rafinha, or it's on other people, or I'm not sure what it is. But the Rafinha concern is a real thing that I would sum up as the difference of him with the ball, which is as it put them right back on equal or the front footing, especially at home. Going to win the layoff to Pedri. Nice switch to Cancelo. Switching, really, really important in this game. We'll talk about it throughout the rest of this 5 headlines, but it was a nice switch to Cancelo. He beats one, and Porto were caught sleeping. There was also a ton of Barca shirts in the box. 5 total when Cancelo released the shot. Lewandowski had dropped deeper, so Joao Felix made a run off of him to get into the box. Gundogan was also making the run forward, anticipating some kind of rebound or something coming off the boot of Cancelo, and Rafinha was making that run to the far post, with Lewandowski, then again I said, in behind him, and Rafinha making that move off Lewandowski. That is how you create confusion and space in the box. One switch puts you on the front foot, you beat a man, and you throw bodies into the box to create a shooting lane. That is how simple it could all be. And it makes me wonder, why does Barcelona not do that every single time? So once the equalizer came, then came some of the frustration. Joao Felix skied the go-ahead goal in the 35th minute. It was a Rafinha cutback, and Joao Felix couldn't get anything on net. For as good as Cancelo was on the left, Joao Felix was worse in that first half, which is why it remained 1-1 for a while. 42nd minute, Rafinha misses one this time. Pedri intercepted Diego Costa's pass, and it got deflected, but Rafinha put the rebound wide, another opportunity missed. Then Iñaki Peña on the other side, full stretch save at the end of the first half to deny Varela, got enough to punch it away, a really good save. And I even mentioned before this game that Iñaki Peña, this really in his career, unlike everybody else. You say it's a make-or-break game, get him out of my club. But for a backup goalkeeper, with Ter Stegen questionable for this and likely back on the weekend, this can make or break Iñaki Peña's career. A good showing in the Champions League because there is so little film of these backup goalkeepers in big matches or important matches. There were 6 games he played for Galatasaray. This is the most important game of his career. This was a day for Iñaki Peña, and he came up huge on the day. I'll keep mentioning his saves throughout these last 2 headlines, but I want to make sure to be clear that he was huge in this match, and Barcelona do not win it without him. Second half comes right at the start of the second half. Joao Felix inches from the go-ahead goal again, hitting the crossbar at that time. Bad news, another miss from Joao Felix. Good news, Barcelona started on the front foot, something they have not really done in the last few weeks of games. Right after, Cancelo gets an interception, and Joao Felix wide less than a minute after the crossbar hit. And it does seem obvious, I'll say it again, but this is Cancelo's best showing in a Barca uniform since Betis Antwerp. And it does bear thinking about the thing I mentioned right at the start of these 5 headlines about those numerical overloads on the left that just don't happen on the right, whether he was playing right winger, which I thought was his worst position, or at right back. I think those numerical overloads on the left, I think have a major thing to do with it, but I do also think that the movement of Lewandowski was better today. The movement of Joao Felix off of Lewandowski was better today, and as I said, Rafinha worked really hard and missed a lot of chances, but put himself in really positive spots. I thought the movement of the front 3 was important and created space for Cancelo. Speaking of that space, 2-1 comes in the 57th minute, another build-up from their own half, that being Barca's own half, and it's another switch, this time from De Jong, Cancelo and Joao Felix playing together, Cancelo to Felix, back to Cancelo outside, and then the really nice final ball in, one that Balde does not yet deliver. Hopefully he will someday, but he does not deliver this ball for the one-time pass in and net from Joao Felix, and for a guy that missed a ton in this game, a tidy finish for Joao Felix too. Is it a positive performance from Joao Felix? Just like Rafinha, you take the good and you take the bad, and you kind of take the win with this one. I'm not telling you to do that with Barcelona overall, but I'm saying with these 2 forwards who missed a ton of chances in this game, you take some of the good that they put themselves in good spots, and Joao Felix got one from one of those good spots. And then headline 5 is keep it tight or don't. And that's at that point, Barcelona, yes, they would have gladly liked to get a third, but you also got a sense that it wasn't going to come. So they had to batten down the hatches and get this result no matter what. You can't play scared, of course, especially at home, but Barcelona didn't go into a shell or anything like that. They still kept trying to play. 64th minute, another switch from De Jong to Cancelo. Lewandowski gets a head on it, but Cardoso had it well defended enough where he couldn't get, that being Lewandowski, enough power on it. 71st minute, how did the shot not come off from that move? I don't know. Cancelo plays Joao Felix in behind, and either he couldn't find the right angle, but Lewandowski was wide open, and either he, that being Lewandowski, was indecisive to hit the ball first time. There's probably Lewandowski to blame, or the pass wasn't where it needed to be, but frustrating nonetheless in a moment that should have put the game away. Iñaki Peña, another save in the 72nd minute, as I promised. Then the 75th minute came along, and Joao Felix off for Ferran Torres. Offside anyway, but immediately skies one over after just coming on the field. At least Ferran Torres was ready to go from the moment he came on the field, didn't have to get accustomed to the game. And the game really was opening up after Ferran Torres came on and not fall into that danger of allowing the opened up game to put them on the back heel. They kept pushing forward, which as you know with Barcelona, is the best way for them to defend as well. 80th minute was one of the two scary moments late. They were very fortunate that being Barcelona. The run down the right for Porto, Iñaki Peña, and a scramble of bodies involving Inigo Martinez, Koundé, and Gundogan. You do need some of that luck. You do need some of those moments in the Champions League, and you got one there. Torres then misses the net after the Rafinha deflection moments later. Frustrating again. 82nd minute, Cancelo rewarded for his good work by limping off for Balde to come on. They say cramps, so hopefully nothing more than just cramps, but Cancelo gets the deserved ovation. Man of the match, his best performance in a Barcelona shirt. And actually, honestly, while I say for Joao Felix and Rafinha, one match doesn't change your mind, I don't know. This might be one of those because remember, he's on loan, but Barcelona would then have to go out and buy him. I think Barcelona, more than Joao Felix, are really considering Cancelo after a game like this. I will say it was also much better by Barcelona, even with Balde coming on, keeping possession and kind of keeping hold of that match in the last 10 minutes or so, really taking the sting out of the game and pinching Porto into their own half. Rafinha, almost a spectacular bicycle kick as he came off for Lamine Yamal in the 89th minute, get to a standing ovation, but Diego Costa saved it at his near post. Wonderful delivery from Gundogan as well. I would have liked to see that highlight. Those can be really important things for not only the player, but for the fans as well. Just being able to celebrate a bicycle kick. I mean, look at what Garnacho did with Manchester United. Has he been good this season? Ask a Manchester United fan. Have they been good this season? Ask a Manchester United fan. But you saw the way that that bicycle kick circulated, and it made everybody feel like having a much better season, that being Garnacho, than he is. But it does galvanize the fan base a bit too. So I think that positivity would have been helpful to watch and rewatch that highlight. But alas, Rafinha goes off to the standing ovation. I already mentioned, I see his work rate, why he got the ovation. I also see why he got a few jeers earlier in that first half as well. It's good and the bad from Rafinha. The late moment from Taremi, but right at Iñaki Peña. So at that moment, you kind of take that exhale, you take your breath. Barcelona survive. They have now won 3 consecutive home UEFA Champions League matches for the first time since 3 matches way back between November of 2019 into November of 2020. And Xavi has finally gotten to the knockouts as the manager of FC Barcelona, which, yeah, it seems like not a lot, but after, again, 3 years of doing this and that not being the case, that is a lifetime. So I look forward to the knockouts with Xavi in charge. I think, obviously, he'll at least be in charge of those, regardless of what happens with Atletico Madrid and Girona. But I do think with Atletico Madrid flying high, Girona did settle for a draw yesterday. I think Barcelona does have a fighting chance in both those matches. But those matches, very much like today, isn't about building something. It is about surviving. It is about getting your 3 points, or for those 2 matches, 6 points, any way you can. So I do hope you return, you come back. I do plan on having a podcast coming out between now and then. As I said, there's still even more to talk about with this match and these 5 headlines and maybe some of the bigger ideas that Xavi kind of showed us a little bit of in that second half from Rayo Vallecano, showed us more of today against Porto, and I hope continues on against Atletico Madrid and Girona. So again, if you could subscribe or give me a good rating on the podcast apps, best way to help the show and all that stuff. But as always, until next time, Forza Barca.